All right, today we are diving deep into the heart of India's incredible wilderness. We're going to journey from the Himalayan foothills, home to legendary tiger reserves, all the way to, get this, the world's only floating national park. Along the way, we'll uncover the amazing strategies that are being used to protect some of the most iconic wildlife on the entire planet.
Okay, so to really get a handle on all this, we first need to, well, get the language right. Because you see, not all protected areas are the same, not by a long shot. They've got different names, different rules, and totally different goals. So let's break down the basic toolkit of conservation, shall we?
So at the very top level, conservation really splits into two main paths. You've got in situ conservation, which is a fancy way of saying we're protecting wildlife right where it lives, in its natural habitat. Think of a huge national park. Then you have ex situ conservation. That happens off-site, in places you might be familiar with, like zoos or botanical gardens. For our journey today, we're focusing squarely on that first one, in situ, and exploring how India protects its amazing wildlife out in the wild.
Okay, so within that in situ world, India has three main labels you'll hear about. First up, national parks. These are the Fort Knox of conservation. Super strictly protected, pretty much exclusively for wildlife to do its thing without us getting in the way. Then you've got wildlife sanctuaries. They're also all about protecting animals, but there's often a little more flexibility, a bit more wiggle room in the rules. And then there are biosphere reserves. Now these are something else entirely. It's this really ambitious model that's not just about the animals, but also about protecting the culture and traditions of the people who live there. And we're definitely going to circle back to that idea in a bit.
All right, so now that we've got the lingo down, let's actually go on a tour across India and see how this all works in the real world. We're about to visit some of the most unique and important protected spots, and trust me, each one has an incredible story to tell.
First stop, we have to go back to where it all began, Jim Corbett National Park. This place was set up way back in 1936, making it India's very first national park. But its place in history is even bigger than that. Because in 1973, this was the exact spot where the legendary Project Tiger was launched, a massive, nationwide mission to save the incredible Bengal tiger from literally disappearing off the face of the earth.
Okay, now let's head east to the state of Assam to Kaziranga National Park. And folks, this place is the scene of one of the world's greatest conservation success stories. No exaggeration. This park is the last major stronghold for the great one-horned rhino. We're talking about a species that was brought back from the absolute brink, thanks to the decades of hard work and protection right here in this park.
Let's keep heading east, and we get to something that almost sounds made up. Kebul Lumjau National Park in Manipur. It is the world's only floating national park. Yeah, you heard me right. The entire ecosystem, including the very endangered Singai deer, lives on these huge floating islands of plants and soil called fumdis. They just drift around on Loktak Lake. I mean, come on, there is literally nowhere else on the planet like this.
So we go from a floating park to the last kingdom of an absolute legend, Gir National Park in Gujarat. This place has a responsibility that is just monumental. Why? Because it is the only place in the entire world where the majestic Asiatic lion still roams free. Think about that. The fate of an entire subspecies rests right here, within the borders of this one park.
And the incredible diversity of these places is just mind-blowing. Let's do a quick fire round. The state with the most national parks. That's Madhya Pradesh, right in the heart of the country. India's first ever dark sky park? That's Pench Wildlife Sanctuary, protecting the beauty of the night sky. The only place you can find the super rare melanistic or black tiger? Simlapal National Park. And the last hope for the critically endangered Kashmir stag, the hangul, that's Dashigam National Park, up in the mountains. Every single one of these places protects a unique and irreplaceable piece of our planet's story.
Okay, so these individual parks are obviously incredible. But what if we could think even bigger? What if we could zoom out? Well, this brings us right back to that idea we touched on earlier, biosphere reserves. This is a really ambitious model, and it's trying to answer one of the biggest questions we face today. How can humans and nature not just get along, but actually thrive together?
The whole idea behind a biosphere reserve is that it has this dual mission. It's not just about protecting wildlife and trees and rivers. It's also, and this is crucial, about protecting the cultural heritage and the traditional way of life for the local communities who've lived on that land for generations. So, how on earth does that work in practice? Well, it's actually pretty clever.
It uses a 3-zone system. Think of it like a set of rings. At the very center, you have the core zone. This is basically a national park. Super strict, hands-off, no-go for most human activity. Wrapped around that is the buffer zone. Here, things ease up a bit. Limited stuff like scientific research or some ecotourism is allowed. And then, on the very outside, you have the transition zone. This is where people actually live, where communities have their homes and farms and work on sustainable businesses.
And this gives you a perfect visual of how it all fits together. You've got that hardcore, protected core zone right in the middle. That's surrounded by the buffer zone for things like research and education. And then you have that outer transition zone, where local communities can live and work in a sustainable way. It's really a living blueprint for how we can balance protecting nature with the needs of people.
And this brings us to the really big picture, because India's network of protected areas, it's not just about India. It's a huge contribution to conservation efforts all over the world, especially with this really forward-thinking biosphere model.
So just how big of a commitment are we talking about? Well, right now, India has a total of 18 designated biosphere reserves woven right into the fabric of the country. And get this, out of those 18, 12 of them are recognized on the world stage. They're part of UNESCO's World Network of Biosphere Reserves. That basically puts them in the global spotlight as these incredibly important places for learning how to do conservation